All right. Abba, thank you for thank you for another day of breath. Thank you for Shabbat yesterday, and thank you for all these folks here with us today as we talk about blessing our children and now blessing them in their young years. I ask for comfort for anyone who might feel guilty about things they didn't do or did the wrong way raising young children. And I ask that today is a good first step in healing that, and also for I guess retroactive healing for their children as well as we learn to repent from these things and to make them better and to speak those blessings into our children's lives at any age that they are. We love you, thank you, and praise you. That's Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. Um, did anybody else feel like this chapter was a roller coaster of emotions, or just me?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No,
Okay.
I was just listening in for the information. Well, we'll talk about what I found interesting later since you asked me the question for now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or share what you've got.
I just don't want it to derail it.
Okay. Anyone?
Unless nobody has.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm the only one that was on an emotional roller coaster. Jessica.
I don't think I was on an emotional roller coaster with this one as much as I was last one, but I think the prayers at the end got me. And it had more to do with the prayer for if you'd lost a child and then had a child after that child. And I feel like I want to send it to my mom and see if she'll pray that prayer. Only because so I actually have two sisters named Jennifer. I have one that died 2 years before me at 2 hours old, and then I have a sister named Jennifer that's like the third sister down the line that survived. But I have been called Jennifer so many times throughout my life that it was just like kind of a running joke. Like even my ex-husband called me Jennifer on accident once, like, and he knows my name. Yeah. So like,
Wow.
um, just completely bizarre occurrences, and I never like thought about it until we were reading that prayer and realizing, oh, I wonder if that's a soul tie that my mother created, or because of her fear. And so even though I had been healed the week of my birth and all of that, there's still that surrounding. I had the exact same thing she had in utero, and I was told to be aborted, and my mom said no. There was still all of that circumstance regarding her not being born, or being born and then dying. And so I think I'm gonna send her that prayer and just see about her praying that for me. And she will. I don't doubt that she would say that prayer. Um, but I never thought about it, about how like why I'd been like mistakenly called Jennifer so many times, and it might have been something similar to what he talked about in that prayer at the end. And my mom was pregnant like 10 times, and only 4 of
Oh,
us
wow.
made it. So, and I wasn't supposed to be one of those 4. So I think she could pray it over all of us children, and it count, like not just, it wouldn't be just me. But I think when we did pray that prayer, we did it over, we prayed it for Dominic, right? I think Dominic and yeah, we prayed it for Dominic and Teddy, just because we had miscarried after Alex. And so that was, I think, the thing that stood out to me the most. I'll have to relook at the chapter real quick.
And how, just overall, like, how is your living sister Jennifer's life?
It's chaotic. She like, she's a nurse, but yeah, she had to go. She almost lost her nurse license for a DUI hit and run. She didn't hit anybody. She hit a light pole, but
Okay.
while driving drunk and then driving home. So she almost lost her nurse license, and her child has type 1 diabetes, so she's constantly living in fear of her child dying. And so yeah, there's a lot with that
Okay.
and then she was the one that um growing up was always saying, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be alive. Why did you have me? Type of thing. Out loud physically saying that as a
Yeah.
like a 5-year-old. So yeah.
She needs to read this book.
Yeah.
Others.
I know she's there. Her husband walked away from yacht. He especially after their daughter got diagnosed with type 1, because he said pretty much like there can't be a God if my daughter has to suffer like this. And then he was rewarded with $1 million. So like I don't like that was the enemy solidifying like, hey, you
Yeah.
don't need you can do it all on your own type of thing. So
Just realized our speaker isn't connected.
Oh,
Well, that would be
it's
why.
not. Let's get that connected.
So as we listen to this chapter again, I'm telling you, it was highs and lows for me. Even when thinking about the past chapters, because obviously we were married, so there brings upon a blessing for a child. We planned for these children, so that brings upon a blessing, even though it still happened sooner than we expected, or at least I expected. So there was still some shock. But anyway, and we didn't, the first two, we didn't find out the gender, wanted a surprise. And even up until the point of finding out the gender for Finnegan, I'm bad at this. I get it wrong. I've not been right one time. and with Elliot, like I just knew he was a girl. And then he came out and he wasn't. And I still haven't fully pinpointed like what the real disappointment was. I had first at an angle where I was not the first to see him, and in a precarious position, having it yelled out to me before I could like get comfortable and see my child and accept what we had. Like I hadn't even seen his face, and it was announced, you have a boy.
It was me. I announced it. I
Yeah.
caught him and said, "We've got a baby boy.
We've got our boy."
No.
Yes.
There's an hour.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
We got our boy.
We got
I have it on no.
No, I think you're hearing it wrong.
Karen remembers.
not on the call.
I'm gonna make sure I've got it in here.
Follow up with you, Drew.
What was that, bro?
So I'm gonna follow up with you.
Yeah. If I'm outside freezing, you'll know who was right.
No, I have seen it on here. So anyway, his cord was still attached, and I had these just my heart sank hearing that it was a boy. And there was, not that I never accepted him, but there was some gender, what's the word?
Disappointment or
gender disappointment. That's the word. For about 3 days. And then after 3 days, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine if you were a girl. Like, you're perfect. You're just who we needed.
And in my defense, we've talked about this. I really thought she wanted me to call it out when I caught him. Like that, we had a big miscommunication on that. I thought I was doing what you want.
That's a tea time discussion. Yeah, that,
You know what, Josh, this is what we're talking about Wednesday night in man's chat. Yeah.
There you go.
excuse me. Yeah, so I had that. Then this was pre-Torah, but because of my upbringing, I knew that 8-day circumcision is what was required. And we even knew that when we had Kinsey, but obviously we didn't know what we were having. But because of the whole 8-day thing, even with her, we had already planned the 8-day baby naming ceremony. Now, y'all don't know my mother, but I would say that she was a big factor into the reason why we did that. And my belief was, and still is, I suppose, you really can't hate on my child's name after you've met and held and fell in love. Like, who cares what you named this baby? You know, this baby's wonderful. This baby's perfect. This baby's in our family. This is my grandchild. This is my niece, my nephew, whatever. Mother proves me wrong. You still can. But anyway, so we've had
It's all about Jane.
we've had the blessings of having this baby naming ceremony for each of our children, a time to dedicate them to Yah. Now, again, listening to this, he talked about having the officiant, pastor, rabbi, whoever, bless the child, and that we were to as well, and that you also bless them through the name. And I don't know specifically that we spoke blessing or prayer or dedication or anything over our children. We kind of left that up to the professional, I would say.
Yeah.
Because we were just too ignorant, unlearned of what our power and authority really is. That looks very different if we had another now. So yeah, I felt like it was a lot of roller coaster. You know, we got these things right and we got these things wrong, and then we did these things right, and oh, we kind of failed here. It was a lot. And somewhere in here, I think it was towards the beginning, he placed a lot of that on the mother, that this blessing at birth, so much of it was on mom.
Right at the beginning. Yeah.
And maybe that's why I had more of a roller coaster on that. Who else has something to share? Go ahead.
I found it really interesting because he talked about I think in the womb, he had the saying, you can, just because you are born gay doesn't mean you were created gay, which I always found really, really poignant. And then he expands on that a little bit in this one, where he talks about, well, then, you know, the child's already born, but there are still actions that the parents can take to convey Satan's identity to them. And then they start to grow up and have homosexual feelings and lifestyle. So I find it interesting that it doesn't have to just be one way that can happen, but nonetheless, it's still up to the parents to convey the right blessing and message to them.
Very good.
I agree that it does really put things in perspective.
Yeah. Makes me wonder, like, friends or peers, I guess, that came out like in high school. I wonder how long they were dealing with that, if there was something in their recent adolescence that had happened, or they didn't receive the blessing, or they did receive the curse. You know, makes me wonder.
Jeff.
So I know that with my dad had wanted boys, and then so we were always like, I don't know, not I don't know. He just wanted boys, and so when we weren't boys, he had 3 girls under 3, and then 10 years later he got his boy, and his boy ended up not being what he wanted,
Mm.
in the way of like just not athletic and very not what he wanted. But my sister was supposed to be a boy, um, a year younger than me, and she was told, or they told her, or my mother, "Oh, you're having a boy." And then she came out and she was a girl. But I just remember I had a pink room with flowers and the whole thing, and she had a blue room with trains and the whole thing. And they changed her name from William the Third to Jillian. Um, and so, but she has very masculine traits. And we were all for the most part. Her and I were tomboys because we wanted to please our dad and make our own money and that sort of thing. But now she's still living with that not not pleasing type of it took me a long time to not care what my dad thought. I guess is uh and not what he thought, but like for me to do things that I thought would please my dad, even though I didn't consult him. And like everything had to go through, oh, what would dad think about this type of thing? And even to the point where her and I have um body image issues because we can't be around dad when we're a certain size, um and that had he was verbally abusive anyway with size to my mom. And so um I don't think that has to do with the male thing, but he really wanted a male and we were not males, and he had a business and we were supposed to take over the business, but we couldn't because we were female. And then he had a son who wanted nothing to do with his business and was not good at sports, and my brother, he just turned 30 last month or whatever, but um he just it it's hard. It's a hard thing to watch that but my mother was allowed to stay home and get bed rest because she was pregnant with a boy um for my when my brother was and then he almost died and it was a whole thing. And so uh yeah, it just it that it did bring up trauma that I had to work through. So yes, I guess it was now that we listened to this like 2 days ago and somehow I like blocked it all out already. Um, but yeah, so yeah, that
It sounds like your sister is a textbook case.
yeah,
Like literally,
for sure.
literally.
Yeah, and that sister is also a heavy alcoholic. And my dad was an alcoholic, so um, I did not. I'm thankfully allergic to alcohol, so that was never my thing.
Oh,
That never,
wow.
yeah, it was never an option for me. Um, yeah.
Now, I don't remember what she said, but I have a friend when I haven't heard the story of her second birth, but when she had her first, out emerged this child and she's holding her baby boy and she literally just started speaking blessing and prophesying over him. And I remember thinking, wow, that is really beautiful and not at all at the top of my thought list after just birthing a baby. Um, but I'm curious, is that anything that any one of you have ever done? I'm going to go with Tammy.
Oh, I was just thinking, Karen, I'm like with you. Well, my children were hospital babies, and so, you know, I think there's so much activity and the atmosphere is just not conducive to it. They're hurrying to take your baby away to go do what they want to do when they feel necessary to do. And I was thinking that, my daughter was away from me for hours. and probably the other two as well, and I didn't know back then to stand up and say, no, don't take her. She's fine. I'll keep her, and when I finally got her, it was because a nurse snuck her in there. And I do remember just being in awe of her, looking her over. The nurse was like, yeah, go ahead and count those toes and all. I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I was just like, oh, but I did, because she said to, and that would have been the perfect opportunity. But if you haven't been raised in an environment of blessing, it just doesn't come to mind. I think maybe I was thrilled with her, even though she wasn't. I mean, I was typical of, want the boy first. But my ex-husband, he always could nail it. I mean, and he wanted a girl because he worked with guys who had daughters and he loved how they were with them. He loved that father-daughter thing. And so he wanted a daughter first. And, we were young. But I just, I just had like this thing of that had been passed down to me of, you have your boy first and then the boy can protect the girl and all that stuff. But as a baby and as a child, you perceive that as rejection. And I believe he's right on target on that. It's the perception of the child as, that they're not wanted and something's wrong with them. And I'm really trying to, like correct that with my grandchildren, because they did that too. And I think I've shared this, but I remember at the gender reveal for my granddaughter, my son's first child, they had t-shirts made up in the color of the gender, for whatever it was. And they had both just knew it was a boy, even though everybody was guessing girl, including me. They just were not prepared, did not believe it. So when they saw the blue t-shirt, Team Hoffman, their faces went, and they didn't realize it. No, they did not. They still won't admit that they were disappointed. But everybody saw it. It was just an instant response because it wasn't what they were expecting. Now they adored her when she was born. But, thinking about that, she felt that rejection, is powerful.
It really is.
I've always told people, if you want to know what the gender of your baby is, ask me. Whatever I say, it's the opposite. I have never been right once.
Well, we've definitely never been right with our own.
I've never been right with anybody.
Have you not?
No.
I've gotten others.
And I've always been like, yeah, this is a boy. And then a girl, oh, all right, never mind. Yeah. If you want to know, ask Drew and just.
My ex-husband, who was far from I mean, even though he made a, confession that, and all that, but he would nail it every time. And so, and he doesn't like to look at me or talk to me, but I did manage to ask him before my granddaughter was born. I said, so what do you think? Or no, I guess I said, what do you think it is? Or that we already knew the gender because of the gender reveal. I said, did you get it right? And he went, yep. And I was like, okay.
I know that this question is probably a little bit more last chapter, but I didn't think about it last chapter, but during this one, what do you guys think about baby showers being a blessing, like as a blessing for the child? Well, my question is not that it should, but is it?
Oh,
Is that considered a blessing?
It all depends on how you do it.
Gabby?
Yeah, I agree with Drew. I think it all depends what the focus is. Is it just on Because then you've seen some where it's just all about the mom, or you know, the couple in general. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's about the baby that's coming and focusing on the baby, and trying to get people to do sentimental things. Really,
Well, and thinking back, I was at baby showers with friends. They would do co-ed baby showers, and we were just boozing it up the whole time. So what does that convey?
yeah.
Or gender reveal was done with booze.
Yeah, I haven't been.
Yeah, you did. It was your best friend.
Well, no, okay, there was alcohol involved.
No, they did boozy drinks
at a restaurant. Oh, that's right. It was at a that's right.
Yeah, that's how they did. We either got a pink drink or a blue drink.
That's right.
And it was an alcoholic drink, except for the mama.
I'm remembering that now.
So also, gender reveals, is that also a blessing? Yeah. I guess that depends on, are you really set on a boy and you see pink smoke?
Yeah, we've seen those like gender reveal fails where it's red flags and you should probably run.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, they burned down forests for gender reveals.
Hey, forest fires can be a good thing.
Absolutely.
They bring out new lines.
This one's going to be a firefighter or an arsonist.
Let me look at some of these others. Does anyone else have anything to add? I will say the little excerpt here, blessing at the time of birth may involve ensuring the child receives verbal and physical communication from the parent that he is wanted, accepted, and welcome, and the mother providing love and physical nurture. And I'm like, yay, check. Like, I did do these things. It's not like we were ever verbally negative towards our baby. And then receiving the child as the sex God created him to be. And that's where, do I take this number 2 as at face value? Because obviously I accepted Elliot for who he was, but there was still disappointment. Does that disappointment override? And because it was only for a few days, does it still override? And so I don't know. I struggle with that one. And then number 3, imparting the name with spiritual meaning. And I feel like we did that at least enough. And then a reasonably trauma-free birth. And I feel like that is subjective as well. Where Tammy may have had all hospital births that went smoothly, but was it traumatic because it was a hospital and not intimate?
Well, and then even compare all of ours. Like, his was a breeze comparatively.
Yeah.
And the other 2 there were definitely traumatic things about them. I don't know, it's up to you to call them whether it was a traumatic birth or not.
Which one?
Either Kinsey or Elliot.
Kinsey's
being the first time and the hospital transfer and stuff. Like,
it's interesting. There, maybe not trauma, but disappointment in the fact that I did have to transfer. But they were great. Yet at the same time, I did not want to do that again.
Yeah.
I really wanted
and
at home.
And so long.
Oh, it's so long, and I would call it traumatic for me.
Yeah. Kinsey's a little traumatic.
Yeah. You fainted, not me.
That wasn't because of trauma. That was because of lack of sleep and blood sugar.
Or the needle on my back.
I didn't see a needle.
Okay.
I had my hand on your shoulder, and all the blood left my arm, and I went, oh. And that was it. Lights out.
Yeah, and so then when I look at the cursing, so parents communicating verbally or physically that the child isn't wanted, we didn't do any of that. And then expressing disappointment, I don't know that I would say I ever expressed it. So maybe there isn't a curse. I don't know. See, I feel really up and down as to where I am in that. And then demeaning or negative name, not a thing. And I don't know that the child experiencing significant trauma at birth is the thing that we, I think it was just mama and the papa.
All right, listen, I need to clear my name a little bit here. With Kinsey, it was 48-hour labor, right? 50-hour labor. So had been awake for at least 24 hours, hadn't eaten anything. And granted, I was dumb. I was trying to do the right thing and be like, no, if you can't sleep and eat, I can't sleep and eat. You know, solidarity. You know, because I thought that was,
Times I said some sleep. I don't remember telling you no eating.
oh, with Elliot, you like don't sleep. Like, you know, don't. So one of us has to be rested. But so, you know, after all this entire long labor and having to transfer to the hospital, that was a traumatic part for me. It was you crying in the passenger seat while I'm speeding down the highway to get to the hospital. Is we get there and she's getting an epidural, and they're like, hey, you know, all right, put your hand on her shoulder, keep her still. And I'm on a stool below the bed, so I'm reaching up like this with my hand on her shoulder. And again, like 0 blood sugar, 0 sleep, and I feel all the blood rushing down from my hand and my arm, and I see it just pooling in my upper arm. And I looked at the nurse. I think her name, Eileen.
Patty,
That wasn't. Anyway,
Irene.
Irene. I was like, hey, Irene, I'm gonna pass out. She goes. She looks at Karen. She goes, what is he kidding? And she goes, nope. And right then I just went bank, just laid forward, and I woke up on the floor, and our midwife fed me peanut butter crackers and OJ until I was able to get back up. But I did wake up, and the first thing I said was, sorry, Karen, you can have the attention back. Or something along those lines.
Something along those
Yeah.
lines.
Sorry to take all the attention away. Go back to
And
Karen.
you're one of the reasons why they have the guy sit down away from the epidural. You weren't even watching it. It still happened.
Yeah, exactly. If I was able to like have my hand on her shoulder downward, I think it would have been all right. Or maybe
Yeah.
level. Yeah.
I don't
They
even
put
know
you in
why
awkward positions for
I
sure.
needed a hand on my shoulder because I literally felt nothing.
They just said to keep you level and
I
steady.
wasn't,
That's
I
all.
wasn't going anywhere.
Maybe they just want to keep the dad involved somehow. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not following your good name. Has anyone gone through the blessing toolbox and like actually prayed the prayers or said the blessing over your children yet? It's okay, we haven't either.
I was wondering about that. So are you saying that like the ones at birth that we should have said that? I mean, you know, my children are grown.
Yeah. You know, that's how I took it from listening to it again. You know, I mean, I'm probably going to go through repenting for, and I feel like that's so harsh, not accepting his choice for your child's gender. It wasn't that I didn't, it was just, I was wrong.
Yeah.
It was more a disappointment in myself that like my natural intuition, which is normally spot on, wasn't there in that regard.
That's exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Deceived. I felt like something's wrong with me. I'm deceived.
Hmm.
and then where did I hear that?
Which part?
Basically, maybe it's in here. Yeah, if you hold on, no, that's not it. No, I'm not looking for that. I thought I heard him say that if you didn't do these things at your child's birth, then do this. Okay. Josh.
You're muted.
Sorry,
I know.
I was trying to change our name so it's just and Josh while
She's over here reaching, touching the phone and doing stuff, and I couldn't do anything.
You can't do
Oh.
that.
Yes, we have prayed some of them over our children because we were in the car listening to it with them, so we kind of did it with them. There was
Okay.
one time a couple chapters ago, I did one of the prayers over them in their rooms. And other than that, we still need to catch up and do some more, but I think
I think it would be nice if we did it individually
instead of all together.
Yeah.
When we're listening to it, we put the speed down to 0.8 so
we-
that so there aren't missing words or whatever. But And then when it's ones you're not supposed to do in front of the children, we kind of just silently whisper it. But typically when we want the children to hear this with us, so so we usually will listen to it in front of them in the car. So
Yeah, when we're traveling, because everything's an hour away.
and it counts as school. It's audiobook.
That's a good opportunity too to be, hey guys, do you hear this? Do you
Yeah.
hear, like, and to try to make it like a real time lesson for them. And even
Yeah.
tell them, like, hey guys, we messed this part up. I'm sorry. You know, like let's try to undo.
Yeah, well, and they've piped up and said, "Oh, well, that's that." You know, they tend to pipe up and say, and identify with things, or have identify things in their life,
Good.
pretty well. If so, they're good at saying, "Oh, that's me," or when we listen to audiobooks, because we listen to audiobooks quite often. So, they're good at telling us if something resonates with them. That's the word, not identify. Resonates with them. So. So it's been helpful with this book as well.
Good. Yeah. JG? I don't know who JG is.
I don't either.
Okay, sweet.
Hey, hey, I'm sorry. I'm using my husband's phone. My name is Ashley.
Hi, Ashley.
Hey. So I messaged Karen last week, actually to talk about something unrelated, and then I asked her about this book again because I remember when y'all first started this, and she said, well, I was like, I'm sorry, I forgot about the book and I want to get back into it. I bought it because of you. And she was like, she suggested read it out loud, because I'm like, I don't have any quiet time. I work full time. I got the kids, and she's like, read it out loud. So I started reading it out loud. And then we started saying the blessings, especially over my older son who's 8. And it was like, I don't know, it felt like a peace in the morning after that. And so I just wanted to share that. It was really nice. And so now I'm like, maybe I should say these prayers every day. My 8-year-old's very he's a very he's stubborn. So anyway, it's been a blessing since we've been saying these prayers. And as far as putting blessings on your children, it's not something that I thought about doing when they were born. But I think that after you have children, and each child you have, that you kind of have like a revelation, something changes happen. And for me, after having my daughter in 2021, and I was pregnant the whole year of 2020, and that whole craziness, after we had her, we really had, that's when we were going to like a regular church and all this. And then we got out of that and started seeing things differently, and got into the more messianic, Hebrewic, however you want to say it, roots. And we actually stopped going to church for a long time. And then because we started seeing the truths of all that. And then, but I still wanted to go to some kind of church, get the, congregation. And so my husband was like, we can go to a church, but they can't celebrate Christmas or Easter. So we found an actual messianic place, like with Jews and Gentiles and all that. And they were speaking with my she's now 4 now, my daughter. They were speaking blessings over her. Like I would go in, and the rabbi and people there would grab her forehead and speak blessings. And I didn't realize the power of that at the time, but now I see it, and it's a blessing that we can say those kind of things that are over our children and feel a difference. I appreciate you introducing me to this book, and thank you. And thanks for talking to me about the other stuff about Tennessee and stuff.
Ultimately, this book is from Jess and Josh. They went through it and suggested that we go through this book. And so, yeah, thank you, Jessica. And Ashley, I tagged you in another post from the group guide on blessings, there's 10 blessings for children. So you are welcome to print those out and pray them or speak them daily over your children.
Absolutely. Great idea. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Let's see. Did anyone else have any testimony or praise like that to share? Linda, I saw that you got to speak blessing over your grandchildren. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was very receptive.
Good.
Even though he's not the older one, because he was 25. And doesn't know God really.
Yeah.
And I asked him to, what do you call it? Pander to, know something, whatever. I can't think of the word right now. His grandma, which I'm called Amma by those two, and I think, and I redid it, and the way that I thought I felt Father was telling me, and I think that he was very touched. And wanted to take home the printed out version. So I felt like that was a blessing to be at least put one thing in. And so I felt really good about that. And then the other one was just turning 7, and not that not much understanding of God either. And even though their dad will pray to God, but so his was more, just a thing that grandma did, and that's which is fine. It was just, I think he was blessed regardless, and they were blessed being here for the week. They really enjoyed it, and so I was just very thankful.
Hey, Linda, can we pray for you? You don't sound good, sis.
That would be wonderful. I've been. I got a 102 fever not let's see, 8 days ago, and it didn't break until Tuesday afternoon, and then it went into a lot of coughing, sinus infection, and I've just been pretty just not able to function. And then I can't talk because of all the coughing I've done in the last 4 or 5 days. So,
Well, but we bring our sister Linda before you for healing. We know that you have a supernatural touch that can take away any and all ailments, and I ask that your Holy Spirit would be engulfing her right now, and with the power of that Holy Spirit and the authority of Yeshua HaMashiach, we collectively agree and command all illness and ailment to leave our sister Linda, to restore her throat, to keep her temperature down to where it's supposed to be. And we command any whether it's viruses, bacteria, we don't know. But we command all these things to leave her in Yeshua's mighty name. We pray for restoration for her health to be back where it is supposed to be.
Give her mental clarity, strength.
And what is you said something, Linda, that you've been miserable or a mess. What did you say? So if you don't,
I mean, I don't even remember what I said. I just know that I haven't been able to function. I've been in bed.
that's what it was. We declare that you are able to function in Yeshua's name. We declare that you are healthy again in Yeshua's mighty name, and that you can get the rest you need in order to completely rejuvenate and be restored.
Yes. So, yeah, I talked to the doctor on last Wednesday, and she was very nice, but then she said that, it could take 2 or 3 weeks. And I said, oh, well, thanks for letting me know, but I don't want to receive that at all.
Right, I rebuke that in Yeshua's name. And I command all unclean spirits attached to everything that Drew mentioned to leave you right now in Yeshua's name.
Hallelujah.
Yeah.
That's right, cough out.
Well, I cough all the time. That's why, and it's hard and whatever. Me.
How many of you ladies, I guess husbands too, have experienced birth trauma?
I've never ever once asked myself, have I experienced birth trauma? So I don't know if I have. No, I said, like, when talking about flying down the interstate to transfer you to the hospital, it's traumatic. While you're screaming, next to me.
There's birth trauma. Julie.
I consider all my births pretty traumatic. They were all, basically standard medical procedures that I didn't know anything about, trying to have I didn't know anything about trying to have, more of a peaceful birth. I have such a, even still, I have such a medical mindset, a modern medical mindset, because I've worked in the medical field since my early 20s. And so it was pretty normal for me just to go to the hospital, get Pitocin, have my baby, my first one, and he didn't come. So I had to have a C-section. So they were all traumatic, I think, but everybody was okay. And I'm just grateful, but I definitely didn't have any type of, I think that some communities and women are going to definitely more of a natural birthing idea, which I really absolutely love. I didn't have anything like that. I didn't know anything like that at all. I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I had a lot of medical intervention with my care, and just so, I mean, I don't want to be like, oh, poor me, but none of my babies came easy, and the recoveries were all really hard. So there was no blessing my babies. I was just barely getting by in the first week after my children. So, but I am blessed, and they were all healthy. And but yeah, I always hear about these stories, where women are trying to get back to natural birthing, and I think it's amazing. It's just nothing that I ever knew about, nothing that I ever thought about. We always think about having babies happens in a hospital, which is, not true. but it's just the modern medical mindset. It's hard to recover from.
Yeah, it is. Jess and Josh.
Josh would like to say that he had tweezers thrown at him.
Yeah, I had trauma.
He had trauma. But I told him I had to go to the hospital because I was in labor. And he said, right now. And so he got tweezers chucked at his face.
That was our first one.
Yeah, with the first child. But I ended up having with Alex, it was a induction or whatever, because my heart wasn't doing well. And so he was born after 26 hours. And we went home from the hospital, and I think we were home for 2 days before my body blew up, and we had to go back to the hospital with a newborn. And my liver and kidneys had started shutting down from eclampsia and then syndrome. And so Josh was there with a newborn that they kept thinking he was stealing because it didn't have a bracelet on. And so, and they didn't know where to put us, so they put us in the bone ward. But with the meds they put me on, like the magnesium and stuff, I had lost my sight. And so it was really hard.
Oh, and melted your skin.
And yeah, really hard as a pharmacist to try to figure out if I could breastfeed my baby while on all those meds. And then I physically couldn't hold him because of the Raynaud's I was having from breastfeeding. And so he did not experience the love and nurture that he needed in those first days. We did kangaroo care. Josh was constantly holding him skin to skin, but Josh had ultimately had to get up every night with him for forever. Yeah. Because I went back to work at 6 weeks, and so Josh was the caregiver for both of us.
Wow.
And then ended up just having to quit his job and caregive. And then he did not want me to get pregnant again. And then I ultimately got pregnant again. And then we miscarried and then got pregnant again. Because I had taken out the insurance plan so that I could have a baby for $250, not $16,000. And so I was like, we have to get it in before the end of the year. It's not the reason. And then with the third one, I wanted a 12-week vacation from work. And so it was never the right reason to have a child. And I know I didn't bring that up with the conception part of it, but just thinking back on it now, I know there's some
I also wasn't ready
repentance and whatnot for having children for the wrong reason. Like our second one was supposed to be a friend for the first one, because I always said, well, you can't just have one puppy, you have to have two. And yeah, and that wasn't the right mindset. And my sons fight constantly. I'm like, I had you so you would be friends. And I think that was the wrong motivation. And the devil has used that as a luck. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I obviously we've mentioned some of it, but Kenzie's birth was 50 hours, 38 hours with my water broken, a transfer to the hospital, again, where they were great, yet they withheld, I was only there for drugs, and they withheld them for 2 hours, and the doctor finally had to come in and say, give that woman drugs. And then things were pretty dang smooth. It was night and day.
Yeah, it went from trauma to like, oh hey, how's it going? How you feeling?
Yeah, everyone else is asleep. I'm
gonna take a little nap.
I finally feel fine.
Yeah.
So I just texted with my bestie.
And
then Elliot.
No, I was sleeping. You weren't texting with me.
No, I wasn't. Not you. And then Elliot was 73 hours of labor, but only 16 hours with my water broken. So that was better. But yet at the same time, like, I don't know. My team just really thought that because this was a second baby, it was going to go faster. And on one hand, it did, but on the other hand, not as fast as they wanted. So they kept pushing me to do things, you know, to speed labor up. And they put me in the pool too early. I never once got my water birth that I planned for. I don't know that that's specifically traumatic, but that one's disappointing and hurt my feelings. And then, yeah, Finnegan was pretty smooth sailing.
The least intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the best midwife.
Best midwife.
Linda.
So for me, just because you have them at home doesn't mean it isn't traumatic.
Elliot, I remember once I had him in my arms and everyone had left, hours later, it usually takes me an hour and a half to birth the placenta. I remember laying in bed holding him, crying, saying things like, I feel like I've been punished for doing it God's way.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's just not true.
It was so bad, Linda.
Oh,
It
I'm
was
sorry.
3 layers of internal tearing. I think I had some 17 inches. I lost so much blood, not enough for a transfusion or anything like that, or, you know, transfer to the hospital. But I wasn't allowed to, we were in a townhouse, and so birth was, my bedroom was on the 2nd floor. I wasn't allowed to leave my room other than the bathroom, which is in our bedroom, for the first 3 days. And then for the next week, I was only allowed to go down and upstairs 1 time. So per day. So if I went down, you know, it's essentially stay down there all day, or if you go up at 2, you finish the rest of your day upstairs. It was bad.
Yeah. So because I had my first one in the hospital and that didn't go well at all on a certain, well, I mean, I guess compared to a lot of people, it went fine, but he had to be taken out with forceps because in those days, you had to lay flat. So, and then I ended up with an infection afterwards and whatever. And so then, then when my current husband and I got pregnant, they told me I was too old to be in the hospital and have a birthing room. And I said, forget you.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, just here where I was, they were not going to let me have a birthing room. I had to be all hooked up to all their machines because I was too old. I was too old. And it's like, so I said, forget you, because my husband's sister, who's older than me, had her babies at home. So I went and found myself a midwife.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, God was just really good. And I mean, as far as birthing, it's just hard, period, right? But I mean, she was fabulous. And I got to walk all around, you know, at midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning outside my house to deal with labor. And then she said the baby wasn't the right direction. And so she said, just get in the shower and he'll turn around because he won't like the heat. Now, what doctor would have known that, you know? And sure enough, I got in the shower and he turned around and came out the right way. So that was awesome. But I mean, yeah, the recovery from that, a lot of skids and yeah, tearing and whatever. The third one then ended up being really fast. And that can be really, really intense when it's that fast. And my midwife made it just in time. It was all, what do you call it? It was all foggy for her to find the place. And then I thought by the fourth one that, oh, I know how to do this. So I thought I would invite some people. I invited my sister-in-law and my two nieces. Oh, that was partly a mistake because the last one, he didn't want to come, and my midwife, and I was in more pain than yeah, I'm surprised I didn't get my neighbors calling the police because I screamed so loud and put marks in the back of my husband's back. And the midwife just said, honey, if you just let me pop your bag, then this baby will come. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I was like, no intervention, no intervention. Oh, an hour later, I'm like, pop the bag. So, like, and yeah, with the yeah, sure, popping the bag. Um, he did come within, I don't know, but quite a few minutes. So, on a certain level, it was so embarrassing because I screamed the worst I've ever screamed. And my poor nieces, were subjected to that. And the only thing I could think is, well, gave them a real life experience of why not to get pregnant, certainly well, until they have a husband.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's what we thought. And those nieces, they did go on. They got married and had 4 children. I think they had them in the youngest one that was here. So even the youngest one, it didn't prevent marriage and eventually having babies. And she has 4 grown adults now. And then the other niece, she took a long time to get married, but and she, so yeah, she had 1 child because of her age. Um, so they still, yeah, but yeah. um, just having a baby is a difficult process and not for the faint of heart, regardless of where you go, home or hospital or all of the experiences.
Yeah. Thank you. Tammy.
Well, I hadn't even thought about the aspect that you mentioned, Karen, about the hemorrhaging, because, well, when you said that it took, you remembered how long it took to deliver your placenta. Of course, again, I was in the hospital, so I don't know how long that took, but they left part of it with my daughter, my oldest, and and I didn't realize it, of course, until like I think it was like a week after she was born that I just began to bleed, and I mean, hemorrhage,
Yeah.
and they just put me on bed rest, and then if I got up at all, then I would really be hemorrhaging, and so I woke up one morning in a pool of blood, and my husband was unwilling to take me to the hospital. He just he just
Sorry.
he just doesn't. I don't know what it is, but he just would not ever. No matter what the emergency, he would not go to the hospital. And so I had to call my mom. She took me. They did a DNC on the table in the clinic, and that was traumatic. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know that. Of course, she was already born, but she was there. So I wonder about that now that you're mentioning it.
Wow. Oh, Tammy. That That's rough. That's rough. Definitely haven't experienced that. Anyone else have anything to share? Because considering what this chapter's brought up, I would like us to go over the green prayer. So if you have something to share so we can add, that would be helpful. No other traumas? Ashley.
So yeah, I agree. Like they said, I feel like any childbirth can be traumatic, whether at home or at the hospital. I had 2 at the hospital and 1 at home. I have 2 young children at my house, and they're still young here with me, and I have an adult child who's 25. I had him when I was barely 18. So that was I guess traumatic in itself. But he did have some, I guess right at the end, he had a bowel movement inside of me. They found, and so they had to get him out quick and get the mucus out. So I guess that's really bad if if they do that. Well, he was late. He was like 2 or 3 weeks late, and so they handled it really well. So no problems. But I guess, and I didn't know what was going on, but I guess he could have had like some issues with blindness. But they got it all out, no problem. So and then after that, talking about circumcision, I knew I wanted to get my children. To me it was just like no thought. Like I wanted to get if I had a son, I was going to get him circumcised. But I didn't know about the 8 days, and they just took them right away and did that. And he came back and he seemed a little, he was very upset. And that was kind of like, well, what did, because I wasn't there, didn't see it, didn't know what happened. And at that time, I wish that they wouldn't have taken him away and that I would have seen it. But I just thought that was procedure. I guess back then in '99, it was procedure to do it that way. And then with my son now, though, who's 8, that was a whole different thing. Like we were actually scheduled, I think 3 or 4 days after, and I canceled because I wasn't feeling well. So accidentally, I think I did it around 7 or 8 days. And to find out there's like something scientific about that as well. Something about the vitamin K. Yeah.
It's naturally at its highest on the 8th day.
Yeah. And it was like, he didn't even flinch during the circumcision. Like, and I was like, wow. And so when I found that out later, that's like how amazing God, gives us these rules, like he gives us these laws. They're not it's for a reason. It's because he loves us. And so to find that out, it was amazing, and that it happened that way with him. And then of course with my other son, like that was a different marriage, and his dad's actually not here. He committed suicide last year. And so finding all this stuff out, like, and how his life was so different, and he's an adult now, and traveling and work and all that, so I don't see him that much. But like I can't wait, because I can't share this with his dad anymore, like hey, save these blessings. Not, I don't even know if he would reciprocate any of that anyway if he was here. But now I'm just hoping I can like speak some blessings over him next time I see him, or that I get that opportunity, because he didn't get to live that life. So I think a lot of us wish that, you find out later, you always wish you knew what you know now. Like, exactly, we all wish that. But so all we can do is look forward, and hopefully I can especially with the traumatic year he had last year, I'm really prayerfully that I can speak some blessings over him.
How is your oldest son and your current husband's relationship? Was your current husband like really ever part of his life?
Yes. See, I think he was around 14 or 15. Yeah, when we met. And it was I think at first it was great. And then he went into high school. We switched high schools, and it was we had a rough time in high school for him. But then as an adult, he went out on his own. A couple times he came back, and now he kind of like has a lot more respect though for us. He sees, like the school we switched to, we were kind of like living in, more of a city in Clearwater. And then we moved to like this really like kind of rich area. So it was like a really rough transition, people driving like $100,000 cars, and I'm making him ride a bike to school. And it was a rough transition for him. We thought we were doing the right thing, but the relationship, to go back to that, yeah, I mean, I'd say he didn't respect him in high school, but now has more respect. Yeah.
Would your husband speak a blessing? Like, would your son receive a blessing from your current husband?
Possible. That's a good idea. I mean, we could definitely try it. He already thinks we're a little weird, so we'll just add to it. Have a ceremony and everything.
Well, we know plenty of people who, especially their father is gone, and in reading this whole book, we've seen that where a lot of these, early childhood and on down, at birth, during in the womb and at conception, so many of these blessings can come from the mother, but then there's so many that are specific to coming from the father or that father figure. So, whether that's your son's stepfather or grandfather, it does seem that some of these blessings are just more powerful when they come from another man.
Typically, boys are looking for the approval of that father figure. That plays a big part into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's difficult with him. He seems to have that what is it with the spirit of entitlement, that error, that he needs a break first. He still had, 25 years old, and anger, so maybe once he breaks that, then we can work on that. But it is hard because I can't think that there's no really father figure. My dad wasn't in his life.
Okay.
His dad is, like I said, gone, and the grandfather on that side, and yeah, it's a tough position. We don't really have like a lot of men in our lives. Like my husband's dad is kind of off the deep end. It's just, yeah, like we pray about that, like have more male figures.
That way by the enemy. The enemy doesn't want strong male figures. And therefore, in our society today, we don't have good, strong male figures. And so much of this, I really do believe, is because the blessings have not been imparted. And in turn, a lot of curses have been put on people, which then gives access to the enemy to, work out those satanic assignments. And it's such a vicious.
It's a cycle. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to move on to Gabby. Gabby, what do you have to share? You are.
I was just gonna share. I didn't have a traumatic birth per se, but for Brad, Rayleigh's is probably, and still to this day, the most traumatic for him. Like, even if he talks about it, he gets choked up, even though that was 8 years ago. But it was a matter of, what was it? We went in for we thought she was gonna, I don't know what, I think the contractions were ramping up like on a Monday. And we went in to the hospital that we were going to, which thankfully was a natural minded hospital. And I had a midwife, but when we went in, it was like after hours for the midwife or whatever. And so they had the contractions, but then weren't really finding her heartbeat. And then so they called the doctor's office, and I guess because the doctor answered the phone, he basically said, stop the contractions and then send them home. And so they did. And then all through the night, Brad just like was keeping his hand on my belly. And when we woke up in the morning, he said, we need to go back in because like something's not right. There's just something not right. And I was like, all right. And so we went back to the hospital, like after going on a long hike to try to get things going again. And then this time they got in touch with my midwife, and she already knew that I had Pitocin with Malachi and how much I did not want that, like whatsoever. And so she talked to me on the phone. She said, are you ready to have this baby? I was like, yeah. She said, okay, so I want you to walk around the hospital for 45 minutes. I know you do not want Pitocin, but and I think they checked me and saw I was only maybe 2 centimeters dilated or something. She said, if you don't dilate more, then, we need to have the baby today. And she said, because they called the doctor, I can't override any decision he makes. Otherwise, we would have had her last night. I was like, okay, like, all right, cool, let's go. And so we walked around, and in the meantime of us walking around the hospital for 45 minutes, as soon as she hung up the phone, she's grabbing all her stuff, the midwife, from her office and like running to the hospital. And like the whole time I'm praying, like, I really don't want Pitocin. Like, I just don't want to go through that again because I did it without any epidural or anything. The only thing I had was like a drug called Stadol, which Brad swears it did nothing. I swear it gave me like 2 hours of sleep and a break when I was pregnant with Malachi. But and so she's like rushing to the hospital, and 45 minutes are up, and they were getting the IV in and had me in the room. And literally right before the nurse pushed the button, Jenny, my midwife, like busted through the door and was like, don't touch the button. We're just going to try something else real quick. And so she bursted my water and got things going. Things were dilating more. But then, and my mom's a NICU nurse. So, we called mom and dad to the hospital, and dad waited outside with Malachi. And mom, she's a NICU nurse, so she knows when things are going south. And she said when she saw 2 nurses at the baby station, you only need one. She said she just texted dad and told him, hey, start praying. Something's going on. Don't know what it is, but need to be praying right now. Keep in mind, nobody's letting me know anything's going on. I'm just, chilling in the bed, like doing the things. But Brad's seeing what's happening. Mom's seeing what's happening. Dad's outside with Malachi, just praying. And I what was it? Oh, and then they had brought in like the OR nurses to sign stuff again. And my other thing was like, I don't want a C-section unless I'm in trouble or the baby's in trouble. Like it's a hard no. And I think at like some point, like maybe 3 or 4 hours into like labor, then my midwife Jenny, trying all these different positions, and she was kind of working, like making transition, but then she'd stop, or like she'd come down the birth canal and then she'd jump right back up into the womb, because she just, which we know now what it was, but then it was maybe like in the 5th or 6th hour of labor, my midwife was like, I don't care what your body tells you to do. I don't care what you want to do. You do not push until I tell you to push. And I was like, okay. And still not telling me anything's wrong. Meanwhile, Brad's still seeing. She's grabbed like 3 tubes of lube, and she's going inside to unwrap the cord that has been wrapped around Rayleigh's neck the whole time, and wrapped around her body. So that's why every time she was descending, it was choking her. So she was going right back up. And that's what was happening the night before. And so, I think I remember like afterwards, Jenny said, okay, you can push. And then she, like, after she got her unwrapped, she said, with everything you have to get her out now. And then mom came down like by my side because they had me turned to the side. So she came to my face, like on the rail. And she said, Gabrielle, you need to get her out now. And I was like, okay, like everybody needs to calm down. But mom said it was like, she said it was cool for her being a medical professional because she said she watched both my eyes just go completely black because I bursted blood vessels in my eyes. And for Brad, it was literally all he saw was like Rayleigh's head matched the exact same color of her hair, black, because all the blood was at her head. And when she came out, her entire body was white, like white as Drew. I don't know if that's a white sweater you have under, but
white is true. It'll
yeah, I mean, she was white as a skeleton. Like I don't know where the picture is, but I took a picture of her hand holding my hand, and it's just a white hand that is holding, because all the blood was at her head and her neck. And so for Brad, it was like, I think we waited for maybe what felt like forever for her to just make a sound, but she passed the APGAR. She was fine. And then Mom like looked at Brad and
You
just
guys
told him,
say black and white baby.
literally. But Mom had like turned to Brad and was like, "You're okay. Like, just go in the bathroom and take a minute, before Dad brings Malachi in here." And he went in the bathroom and like had a total breakdown, because for him it was like a dream of his to always have a daughter. He picked out her name Rayleigh, and like that was almost not a thing. So for me, it was, they did everything wonderful to not let me know that things were going south. But yeah, for him, that's about as traumatic of a birth as we've ever had. And then with Zip, I think he started to relive that, because my midwife, she was like, "Is he always nervous?" I was like, "No," I said, "We had a bad birth with our first daughter, and so he's probably going through that again right now, because I think he did everything under the sun except be in the sunroom with me, like while we were getting, like, he mowed the lawn, washed the dogs, like deep cleaned our bedroom, and made all the sheets." I was like, "If you don't get in here, what are you doing?" But and then it was like, kind of he got the healing from Zip's birth, because that was just the most amazing birth ever and one of the chillest babies we've ever had. But that's about as traumatic of a birth that we've had, but I did not have to experience.
Yeah. Well, is he home?
He's sleeping, but he's been up with the children all night, coyote hunting.
Are you in the room with him?
No, I'm in the sunroom.
Okay. I was going to say, because I'm going to green prayer it. I guess I'm just going to have to include him from afar.
Yep.
Here, I can go in the room real quick. Hold on.
Yeah. So I don't know how many of you have gone through the green prayer. Where we rest your soul part. If there's a lull and you've got something, unmute and add it. Share it with everyone. But Drew and I are going to do our best to remember all these things that have been mentioned. So, in the name of Yeshua Messiah, I speak rest, peace, comfort, restoration, and healing to all the parts of each of you who have experienced a traumatic birth, gender disappointment, hemorrhaging,
medical abuse, medical malpractice.
come up. Thank you. So medical abuse, medical malpractice, medical bullying, all parts that were not given informed consent.
Any parts that were let down by your own expectations. And
all parts that have had a C-section.
had fear of losing a baby.
Unexpected hospital transfer during or after birth. Tammy, you had something.
I was thinking of the fear, especially over the babies that had the cords wrapped around their neck and were having the heart rate drop after contraction.
Yes.
And I'm also thinking of the DNC.
Yes. Yes. Healing to all parts of you that have gone through a DNC.
All parts still unhealed from birth trauma, like physical parts.
Rest, peace, comfort, and healing to all the children who experience this birth trauma, who have these fears of choking or dying or falling.
Yeah.
Comfort and healing to these children that don't feel like they're part of the family.
Claustrophobia came to my mind last night, which is probably the same thing, the fear of tight spaces.
Yes. Yes. Healing to all parts that are claustrophobic.
All parts for the spouses that had to watch their wives in pain or partners in pain.
Rest to all parts of the spouses and other family members that watched a traumatic birth, who had fear come upon them, who had PTSD over birth. Specifically, Brad and Linda's nieces.
My ex-husband, Roger.
Roger, we include him.
All parts for the spouses that tried to advocate for their wives or partners and were shut down by the medical community.
For those of us who wanted to have a safe home birth, but were denied.
Yes. Rest to all parts that have experienced disappointment in place of birth, disappointment in how birth proceeded, disappointment in gender, disappointment in how their spouse or partner reacted, disappointment in their medical team,
All parts of us
disappointment in the road.
over the anesthesia, even just the physical aspect of.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So peace and healing to all the parts of you that were given anesthesia, Pitocin, other drugs, antibiotics, unneeded medical intervention. All parts of you that had your babies taken away from you.
Yeah.
That felt your voice couldn't be heard.
All parts of your body parts, like the placenta, being used for ill will.
Yeah. All parts of you, there's not many, that experience tearing, skid marks, had to go through stitching and bed rest. All parts that, because of giving birth young, you just weren't mentally and emotionally prepared to go through birth.
All parts that you were told you were too old to birth the way you wanted.
All parts of you that gave birth without a partner present.
All parts of you that did not feel supported during birth.
All parts that didn't feel supported during pregnancy and postpartum.
Those parts who felt helpless, whether you were giving birth or there for the one giving birth.
All parts of you that have lost babies. And Jess, I want to include your mother who lost her baby, Jennifer, 2 hours after birth. Yeah, send that woman rest, peace, comfort, and healing to all the parts of her soul.
Thank you.
Have we missed anything?
I want to include my daughter, Crystal, in that she had they didn't call it a miscarriage, but it was an unviable pregnancy. The year before she got pregnant with or maybe months before, I can't remember, before she got pregnant with my oldest grandchild.
Okay. Abba, rest, peace, comfort, and healing to Crystal, every part of her soul that lost this baby. Abba, we ask right now that if there is anything else that needs to be mentioned, we bring it to mind. I feel impressed upon me. So rest, peace, comfort, restoration, and healing to every child that was jabbed without their parents' consent. And we rest on parts that feel violated because of that.
And to those of us who were ignorant and allowed it.
Okay.
Any parts with witchcraft or surrounding taking the soul of the child by taking their print of their soul.
Restoration and healing to all parts of these children that were given any sort of jab, consented or not, by their parents.
Any rest to a child and the mom who are not able to breastfeed or latch right away, or any trauma related to breastfeeding.
And
Amen.
I want to include those of us who were not educated on how to breastfeed and we're told the wrong thing.
Yeah. Rest to all parts of women who felt traumatized and punished after giving birth.
Any parts that had a grief of loss of identity as a self.
Yes, may you remember who you are.
Any parts that had depression during pregnancy, at birth, or postpartum.
Rest to all parts who felt disconnected from pregnancy, from their pregnancy, from their baby. Okay. I release you from these burdens now. Lay them down and never pick them up again. Receive the ministry of Yeshua's Holy Spirit as he comes in greater measure now, bringing you everything you need to grow up into full maturity in him and equipping you for every good work he's predestined for you so that you can fulfill your divine destiny in him. You may be integrated now if you all are ready. I call all your scattered soul parts back to yourself. Come and be whole now as Yeshua makes you one new person alive in him. I release Yeshua's living water, his Holy Spirit, throughout your soul now. As he flows everywhere, you will live again. Nothing can stay dead where he flows. Life to every part of your soul right now in Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, this was a pleasant and unexpected turn of events. I did not expect that we would need a green prayer today, but we certainly did. So are there any other thoughts or comments on this particular chapter? All right.
I think we're pretty thorough.
Yeah.
I have a question about last week, kind of, if
Yeah.
I really, when I was reading all these things, realized that, I didn't know when I was pregnant that you're supposed to be talking to your baby in the womb. And that would have been the case probably with all of mine.
Okay.
And yet at the same time, it wasn't that I didn't have my hand on my tummy or that I didn't want the child. I wanted all of my children. And but I wonder if, like, my not talking to them and that as much, I mean, part of it, I'm like, so some people are more talkative than others. Another aspect is like, no one ever talked to me. So I didn't know that you need to talk a lot to a baby. I mean, I talked to them sufficiently as far as I knew, but then I read all this and I think, wow, I really miss the boat a lot of being able to bless my kids. Um, so do you think I need to like just repent of that and my ignorance? And then
I think it's as simple as, Abba, I'm sorry, I didn't know this. Forgive me.
and yeah, and that's what have kind of been thinking. And then from here forward, I'm assuming that if I'm trying now more consciously to speak blessings into my children now, that that will, that he redeems those things, um, would be my assurance that he's taking care of all my ignorance, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think too, Linda, if you think about, I don't know what decade your children were being born in, but what in the 60s and 70s and 80s, it was all about women independence and empowerment and essentially dismantling moms from the home and dismantling the whole family unit in general. And so it was more so like, just be concerned with yourself and be thinking about yourself. Not to say that you were influenced by it, but that was what the drive of mainstream was at the time. Whereas when I was pregnant with Malachi, it kind of started to come back to being natural minded and crunchy. My mom said, I guess back in her day, they were called granola. But, and there's more studies when I was pregnant with Malachi, like on the effects of communicating with your baby in the womb and letting your baby listen to classical music in the womb. So a lot more was focused on kind of driving moms back to focusing on the womb and childbirth, and being stay-at-home moms were cool again. And so I think that too may have to play a part in it, because mom told me when she was having us that the pediatricians were telling her, oh, you just put the baby in the crib, for 15 minutes and just let him cry it out and put on a pair of headphones. And I tried that and I was like 2 seconds in and I was like, this is the worst, the dumbest idea ever. Like, it gave me heart palpitations listening to Malachi cry the first time he ever, and I was like, no, this is not normal. This is not natural. No bears in the wild listening to their baby just cry and saying, I just gotta let you cry it out, little Timmy. So, it's like the thought process was different too.
Yeah. Um, I didn't, I mean, I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to stay at home and raise my kids. So on that level, and I was able to, and I homeschooled them, which was people thought was crazy back then. Um, but yeah, and I went on the warpath at my church when they introduced the thing about what raising kids God's way. And oh my goodness, it was that, Gabby. It was, you don't let this infant control your life. You let them cry it out. And I was like a nutcase, like, no.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think, what was it, the first time I think Malachi was like 6 months, and Brad's best friend's daughter would have been 9 months at the time, and we stayed the night with them, and he was a big proponent of cry it out. It's good for their lungs. I was like, Reed, you're crazy. But I remember their daughter waking up in the middle of the night just screaming, and Brad was like, "It's not our child. We cannot do anything about it." And I was like, "This is horrible." Like, as a mom listening to this, and our baby's right, like they're right across the room. And he said that it's not our child. There's nothing you can do about it. And I was just like, oh, I love your friend, but me and him gonna have to talk in the morning. Like,
Well,
it's
yeah, and I mean that they are presenting, well, at least in my church, they were presenting this as this is God's way. And I'm like, oh, no, it is not, because you're leaving that child open to demonic influences when they're left there abandoned and nobody responds to their crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you got the
But thank you.
psychological studies that literally show and I totally attribute to the fact that she was left to cry it out all the time is the reason that now, as a 8-year-old, she's kind of heck on wheels, is saying nicely. Like, she just was not she's a wonderful child, but she has some underlying anger issues and lashing out that she's always had. And I'm like, well, I can tell you where it came in at, but
Well, rightfully so, right? Nobody should be neglected like that. That's abusive.
Yeah. Except not when your doctor tells you it's what you're supposed to do.
My case.
Oh,
Exactly. my case. And he looked at me and said, case in point. Had, dark circles under my eyes. I wasn't sleeping because I didn't want, I mean, just so much surrounding it.
I was a good sleeper as a baby, so that wasn't done with me. I mean, I was sleeping through the night by 10 days. I was a mother's dream. Apparently not mine, but I was a mother's dream. And then came out my sister, who was up every 2 hours. And I can't remember how old she was. She would have been small. I'm assuming 3 months or less. And it took only a night or two of them not tending to her. And she finally would start doing longer stretches. But ultimately, all she learned is no one's coming for you.
yeah.
Yeah. Same with my daughter. I think she did sleep on her own very early, like you, but my son was a different story. But he wanted to get up in the night and play, and I was just exhausted. He would not go to sleep. I nursed him. He just wanted to play, and so it just wasn't it wasn't good for me because I was mean. I just, my personality changed, and I was repenting over that yet again the other night.
All right, well, I think we're going to bring this one to an end. We have gone over, and that's okay. But I'm definitely at a hard stopping point. So we will meet again next week, 10 o'clock Central Time, to discuss blessing your child in infancy and early childhood. So if there are any additional thoughts on this chapter, we've got the chat, so feel free to put those comments or questions in there.